The angry female CEO hired a new janitor. His child knew her before he did, and changed everything. The first scream of that night was not a sound, but a look, sharp and burning, flashing across the face of a woman who had built her empire on control and silence. It happened in a sterile hallway of glass and steel, just before midnight, when an angry female CEO locked eyes with a small child who reached out her arms as if greeting an old memory. In that instant, the woman felt something crack inside her chest, something she had buried years ago beneath contracts, deadlines, and grief she never allowed herself to name. Before the story carries you deeper into that moment, pause for just a heartbeat. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Her name was Rebecca Hale, and in the corporate world of Chicago, Illinois, she was known as the Iron Queen. At 42, she was the CEO of Hale Dynamics, a technology firm that occupied 20 floors of a downtown tower and employed thousands across the United States. Rebecca was respected, feared, and whispered about in the same breath. She arrived before sunrise, left long after dark, and tolerated no mistakes. Her anger was legendary, not loud or explosive, but cold and precise, capable of ending careers with a single look. People said she was heartless, but few knew that her heart had once been painfully full. Years earlier, Rebecca had been someone else entirely. She had been softer then, married to a gentle engineer named Daniel, dreaming of building a family alongside her growing company. Those dreams shattered one rainy evening on an interstate highway, when a drunk driver stole Daniel's life, and with it the future Rebecca had imagined. In the aftermath, she learned how to survive by cutting away anything that reminded her of loss. She worked longer hours, avoided friendships, and turned grief into discipline. By the time Hale Dynamics went public, Rebecca Hale had become untouchable, or so she believed. The night everything changed began like any other, with a crisis no one else could solve. A major investor presentation had run late, and Rebecca found herself still in the building at nearly 9 o'clock. As she strode through the hallway toward the executive elevators, she noticed something that immediately irritated her. The floors were half cleaned, trash bins still full, lights flickering in places they should not. Facilities had been understaffed for weeks, and earlier that day she had authorized the hiring of a new janitor, barely glancing at the paperwork. To her, it was a minor detail in a sea of major decisions. Down in the service corridor near the freight elevators, a man named Michael Carter was finishing his first shift. He was 35, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes that had learned patience through hardship. Once, he had worked in construction, but an injury and a company shutdown had pushed him into months of unemployment. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier from an undiagnosed illness, leaving him alone with their daughter, Lily. With no family nearby and bills piling up, Michael took whatever work he could find. The janitor job at Hale Dynamics was not glamorous, but it paid enough to keep a roof over their heads. That night, childcare had fallen through, and Michael had no choice but to bring Lily with him. He kept her tucked away on a bench near the elevators, armed with a coloring book and strict instructions to stay put. Lily was 3 years old, bright-eyed, with curly blonde hair and a habit of studying faces as if she were searching for something familiar in the world. She had seen too much loss for someone so small, yet she carried an openness that amazed everyone who met her. As Rebecca turned a corner, she saw the child. First, Lily was sitting on the bench, legs swinging, shoes scuffed, and light pink dress slightly wrinkled. Before Rebecca could summon irritation at the violation of company policy, Lily slid off the bench and reached out her arms, smiling with absolute certainty. The child's face lit up with recognition, not of a stranger, but of someone deeply known. Rebecca froze. The hallway seemed to narrow, the air thickening as memories surged without warning. Lily's expression mirrored one Rebecca had seen before, in photographs now hidden in a drawer she never opened. It was the same open smile Daniel's niece had worn years ago, the same trusting reach toward a world Rebecca had long shut out. For a moment, Rebecca felt dizzy. unbalanced by a connection that made no logical sense. She knelt without thinking, her expensive suit creasing against the polished floor, meeting Lily at eye level. Something about the child's presence softened the rigid lines of her face, though she did not yet understand why. Michael hurried down the corridor, panic flashing across his features when he saw his daughter so close to a corporate executive he recognized instantly. He expected anger, reprimand, maybe even termination on his first day. Instead, he stopped short, confused by the sight before him. Rebecca Hale, the feared CEO, was crouched in front of Lily, her expression unreadable but no longer cold. In the days that followed, Rebecca found herself unable to forget that moment. She returned to her office shaken, irritated with herself for being affected by something so small. Yet the image of Lily's outstretched arms followed her home, intruded into her dreams, and lingered in the silence of her penthouse apartment. Against her own instincts, Rebecca asked Human Resources for information about the new janitor. She justified it as concern over policy violations, but deep down she knew it was something else. Michael was called into a meeting the next morning, his stomach knotted with fear. He expected discipline but received something entirely different. Rebecca listened as he explained his situation, his voice steady but weighted with exhaustion. He spoke of Lily, of loss, of doing his best to hold a fragile life together. Rebecca heard echoes of her own past in his words, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly listen to another human being without calculation. Over the following weeks, small changes rippled through Hale Dynamics. Rebecca authorized on-site childcare during late shifts, framing it as an efficiency measure. She adjusted cleaning schedules, ensuring no employee had to choose between work and their children. These decisions were subtle, barely noticed by the board, but to Michael and others like him, they were life-altering. Lily began spending afternoons in a bright room filled with toys, her laughter echoing down hallways that had once felt sterile and cold. Rebecca watched from a distance at first. She told herself it was observation, not attachment, yet she found herself lingering longer in common areas, noticing the humanity she had once dismissed as noise. Lily, oblivious to corporate hierarchies, greeted Rebecca each time with the same warmth, as if continuing a conversation begun long ago. With every encounter, the walls Rebecca had built around her heart weakened, brick by brick. The true turning point came on the anniversary of Daniel's death, a date Rebecca usually spent alone, buried in work until exhaustion spared her from memory. That evening, the building was quiet, most employees gone. As Rebecca prepared to leave, she passed the childcare room and saw Lily asleep on a small mat, clutching a stuffed animal. Michael sat nearby, waiting to finish his shift. The sight struck Rebecca with unexpected force. It reminded her not only of what she had lost, but of what she had refused to grieve. That night, Rebecca did something she had not done in years. She went home early. She opened the drawer. She looked at the photographs. She allowed herself to cry, not in weakness, but in release. In the days that followed, her anger softened into something more measured, her leadership shifting from fear to respect. Employees noticed. Productivity rose. Turnover dropped. Hale Dynamics thrived not just financially, but culturally. Michael's life stabilized in ways he had not dared to hope for. With steady income and support, he enrolled in night classes, slowly working toward a certification in facilities management. Rebecca noticed his dedication and, recognizing potential, encouraged his growth within the company. Lily, meanwhile, continued to be a quiet catalyst, her presence reminding everyone she encountered of the simple truth that connection could heal what ambition had broken. As months turned into a year, Rebecca found herself changed. She still demanded excellence, still worked hard, but she no longer ruled through anger alone. She mentored young professionals, invested in community programs, and even funded a foundation supporting widowed parents. Few knew the true reason behind her transformation, but those closest understood that it had begun with a child who reached out without fear. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it has reminded you of the power of compassion and unexpected grace, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe. Your engagement helps spread stories that heal. Just before the end, we ask one more special thing. Please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, or who it reminded you of. Your words matter more than you know. On a quiet evening, long after the building lights dimmed, Rebecca Hale stood by the window of her office, looking out over the city she once believed she had conquered alone. She understood now that success without connection was hollow, and that sometimes the smallest hands could open the heaviest doors. In hiring a janitor, she had unknowingly invited healing into her life. And in recognizing a child who seemed to know her soul before she did, Rebecca finally learned that anger could be unlearned, and that even the most guarded hearts could find their way home. The transformation inside Rebecca Hale did not arrive all at once, nor did it announce itself with dramatic gestures or speeches. It unfolded quietly, in the way she began to notice the rhythm of the building she had ruled for so long. She started recognizing footsteps in the hallway, the difference between hurried anxiety and calm purpose. For the first time in years, the office no longer felt like a fortress she had to defend, but a living place shaped by the people inside it. Michael sensed the change before anyone else did. He saw it in the way Rebecca greeted him with a nod instead of indifference, in how she paused to ask Lily how her day had been. These moments were small, but to a man who had learned to expect nothing, they meant everything. He began to walk a little straighter, work a little harder, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. For Lily, the building became something close to a second home. She no longer clung to her father's leg when he left her in the childcare room. She laughed easily, trusting that he would return, trusting that the world was still safe enough to believe in. Rebecca, meanwhile, was wrestling with something unfamiliar, responsibility not just for results, but for people. Old instincts urged her to retreat, to bury herself again in numbers and strategy. But every time she felt the pull of that old armor, she remembered Lily's arms reaching out, remembered how that simple gesture had undone years of carefully maintained distance. She began scheduling regular walkthroughs of the building, not as inspections, but as conversations. She learned names. She learned stories. Some were hopeful, others heartbreaking, but each one chipped away at the belief that leadership required emotional distance. The board noticed the changes too. At first, they were skeptical. Rebecca Hale's softened approach worried them. They feared productivity would suffer, that kindness would dilute the sharp edge that had built the company's success. But the opposite happened. Employee engagement rose. Sick days dropped. Teams collaborated with a sense of shared purpose that spreadsheets alone could never create. Profits climbed steadily, not despite the cultural shift, but because of it. Reluctantly at first, then enthusiastically, the board embraced the new direction. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after Michael's first night on the job, Rebecca asked him to meet her in her office. The request filled him with the same nervous energy he had felt on that first terrifying morning. But this time, the fear was softer, mixed with cautious hope. Rebecca told him she had watched his progress, his night classes, his quiet leadership among the facilities staff. She offered him a promotion, a supervisory role with better hours and pay. Michael accepted with tears he did not try to hide. For Lily, it meant evenings at home, bedtime stories read without exhaustion pressing down on every word. Rebecca's own life began to expand beyond the office walls. She attended a charity dinner she would once have avoided, then another. She reconnected with Daniel's sister, a relationship she had let fade because it hurt too much to remember. Healing, she learned, was not about erasing pain, but about carrying it differently. It was about allowing joy to exist alongside loss, without guilt. The most profound moment came on a quiet Friday afternoon, when Lily graduated from preschool. The ceremony was held in a modest community center, decorated with construction paper stars and crooked banners. Michael had invited Rebecca without expectation, never imagining she would actually come. But she did. She sat in the back row, dressed simply, applauding with genuine warmth as Lily walked across the stage, clutching her certificate with pride. When Lily spotted Rebecca in the crowd, her face lit up, and she waved enthusiastically as if seeing a beloved family member. In that moment, Rebecca understood something she had avoided for years. Family was not only what you lost, but also what you chose to nurture. Love could return in forms you never expected, at times you least anticipated. As she clapped, tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. Years later, people would speak of Hale Dynamics as a model company, one that balanced success with humanity. They would credit Rebecca Hale's vision, her intelligence, her leadership. Few would know the true origin of that vision, the quiet beginning that started with a janitor's child who recognized a wounded soul before it recognized itself. If this continuation of the story has moved you, if it reminded you that healing is possible even after deep loss, please like, share, and subscribe. And before you leave, comment below what part of this journey touched you the most. Your voice keeps these stories alive. Rebecca Hale never became less powerful. She became more human. And in doing so, she discovered that the greatest legacy she could build was not a company, but a culture of compassion that would outlive her title, her anger, and even her pain.